Next time you're having a bad day, think about Joseph in the first reading. That reading, the Joseph narrative, comes at the very end of the book of Genesis, and it's our first reading, just at least for today. Joseph was the 11th and the youngest son of Jacob. He was actually the favorite son of Jacob, and it's apparent that his father regarded him as the favorite, which was not a good thing with his brothers. He was probably somewhat spoiled. That's the impression we're given. We're told that he was given a long tunic that he wore. And he had also had various kinds of dreams that he freely shared with his family. Dreams which put himself, and he saw himself in a position of authority and power, and his brothers coming begging to him for different things. Eventually his brothers said, enough is enough, let's get rid of this guy. And they plotted against him and wanted to kill him. But instead of shedding his blood, they decided to sell him into slavery for 20 pieces of silver. So that's about all that we hear today in the story. But we should know how it all ends up. The Pharaoh, where Joseph has come out of slavery, takes favor in Joseph and puts him in a position of authority in Egypt. And during a severe famine, it was Joseph who was in charge of distributing food and grain to the people who would come to him from everywhere. And as it turns out, his own brothers make the journey to Egypt to get grain and wheat. And guess who they meet there? In the end, they are reconciled with their brother Joseph, and Joseph becomes, in a sense, the savior of his family. This story really sets the stage in the first pages of the Bible for the story of Jesus. Jesus is the favored and the only Son of God. Yet out of jealousy, his own people sold him into slavery. Judas betrayed him for 30 pieces of silver. Yet even though Jesus was betrayed and put to death by his own people, God raised him up, placing him in power and authority. Like Joseph, Jesus is the redeemer of a family, the human family. And like Joseph's brothers and family, we must go to Jesus for what we need. The story of Joseph is not just a story of a dysfunctional family and rivalry between siblings, but it's a story about how God can bring salvation for us, even through the most difficult and tortuous kinds of circumstances. When the cards are stacked against us, when we feel overwhelmed and powerless because of injustice, because of the unfairness of life, Joseph can inspire us to hold steady, to remain firm, and to wait for the Lord. Just as God watched over Joseph and elevated him in the sight of others, God raises us up through his mercy and his forgiveness. He redeems us from our slavery to sin. He makes us his own children. And just as the story of Joseph ends up with forgiveness and reconciliation with his family, we know that the same thing will happen for us. It is the Lord who will bring about forgiveness and reconciliation between us and our neighbors someday. So as we move into the third week of Lent, we might remember that the goal of these 40 days is to emerge from the slavery of sin to the joys of celebrating the resurrection of Jesus, who is our freedom, the source of our freedom. His resurrection is our own resurrection, and it reveals to us how our own story